Good evening. Welcome to the editorial discussion. Topic of discussion for today is how generative AI is creating challenges in intellectual property, the IP regime or the intellectual property rights that we say, as well as epistemology. So, epistemology is a philosophical concept. It talks about inquiring the proof about system of knowledge. So, whatsoever knowledge is getting created, how can we actually be assured that this particular piece of information can be categorized as a particular knowledge? So, knowledge is a generalized information that could be that is actually acquired through experiences, and it is vetted, or you can say you can prove through various other means. We will see these things in subsequent slides, but the idea is how earlier we were talking only about artificial intelligence. Now we know that artificial intelligence is actually having, you can say, a wider spread as far as its potential uses are concerned, and because of its widespread uses there is always a conflict that is getting created, that too within the intellectual property regime or IP regime, and it needs to be actually delved in a detailed manner about how we need to arrive at a middle ground, because when we talk about artificial intelligence, it is a dual use technology. But what is the meaning of this dual use technology? This technology has potential benefits, but there are also concerns, or you can say negative aspects that are also associated with this. So, we need to have a middle ground as far as making you can say better use of this technology. At the same time, we also need to have rules for responsible use. So, we cannot curtail the growth of artificial intelligence. It is all about, we need to create those all accepted regulations so as to make it more beneficial for mankind. Here in this particular discussion, we will be actually limiting ourselves to only one of the types of artificial intelligence, that is generative AI. So, we will see these things in subsequent slides. So, we will start with the discussion. So, if I talk about what do you mean by artificial intelligence? So, if in a nutshell, what is the meaning of intelligence? Intelligence is information processing ability. So, if a person is considered as intelligent, that particular person has a very high information processing ability. That means whatsoever information that the person is getting through his sensory inputs like ear, nose, eyes, and it is that particular person is comprehending those information in a faster manner, and the brain is processing that information into a meaningful output. And if the person is considered as intelligent, then his IQ is supposedly very high, or the intelligent quotient. But what if I talk about those intelligent processes, what could be those processes? It could be thinking, memory, learning, problem solving, and broadly decision making. So these types of activities are considered to be intellectual activities. But what if these type of activities are performed by certain artificial systems like a software? If that particular software is able to meet certain standards which if performed by a human, and that particular human is categorized as being intelligent, then in a similar manner that particular software would also be considered as intelligent, and in a way, in nutshell, that system is known as artificial intelligence, AI. So if we talk about various realms or we can scopes of AI, it is machine learning. So here we talked about learning. So when in AI parlance it is known as machine learning. Similarly, it can also use speech to text transformation, and that uses natural language processing. Similarly, the cameras which are installed, they can also gather those sensory visual inputs, and using those inputs they can create meaningful information out of it that would be relevant for human use. Then that also becomes a kind of intelligent machine. So we can say artificial intelligence has various uses, but if we talk about AI, AI has progressed as far as its information processing ability is concerned. It is classified into 3 levels. So the first level is weak AI or reactive machines. So these types of artificial intelligence were a kind of stimulus response type. If you could recollect, like Alexa, Siri. So these types of AI systems, they used to give information when prompted, and those informations were largely stored in a particular server. They only connected with those servers by using the prompts which are given by humans. But with the advancement in machine learning, that particular phase was machine learning phase. So this, what is the meaning of this machine learning? So the idea is they work on huge amount of data, and they derive or extract a pattern out of it which is more relevant for use. So they create patterns, and these sorts of all activities which are together known as data science or data mining, that creates a body of knowledge that is typically considered as machine learning. So that earlier phase was more about machine learning. The machine was just learning, it was just using the data and creating those unique patterns that could be used. But as AI progressed, so this was the phase of round about I would say 1990s till 2015. It is still relevant today, but it was more about this period. But now the second phase was more about artificial general intelligence, and the subset of it was generative AI or large language model, LLMs. So this particular period, it started I would say by 2018, and it still continuing and it is still evolving with time. So this particular period was more about, it is a more transition from machine learning towards machine intelligence. So now the machine is not, or the AI is not just reactive, it can also create information out of the prompts or whatever body of knowledge it has created, and it would create information out of it which is more relevant. So this particular system is more generative AI, or the data or the information which is relevant is getting generated out of the information processing which is being done by artificial intelligence. So it is no more a reactive machine, it is more like an intelligent machine. And the third stage, although it is all about theoretical aspects, so it would be super intelligent machines, but that would be machine consciousness. So the third stage will be machine consciousness. So it has not still evolved, or you can say it has not still been utilized in normal world, but works are being done. So here we will talk about this machine intelligence and precisely about generative AI as to how it actually works, and then we will see the potential issues which have been raised in the intellectual property issue related aspects as well as epistemology related issues. Now this generative AI, so it is a, as I told you, it is a category of artificial intelligence which is based on natural language processing. So it tries to use the normal human language and connects it with the information, the body of information that it has possessed, or the learning that it has acquired with time by having interactions with those humans. So it learns from human activities, and it is a kind of large language model. So what is this idea about this large language model? Wherein the information is being stored in a vast quantity. So whatsoever you can say the grammar, the semantics, or the you can say understanding on meaning, the content. So it uses these things, and it is not just limited to a particular language, incorporates many languages simultaneously. It could be Hindi, English, it could be French, German. So it uses information together, it combines it, uses a specific pattern recognition and derives information that is more relevant. So that is why it is known as generative AI. It is generating information. And how, what is the basic architecture behind all these things? It's the artificial neural network. So the idea is all the informations are actually being stored in various nodes, just like human brain. So whenever we talk about the memory, so whatsoever processes which are there, which are being run in the various parts of the brain, it is being done in various nodes of the brain, and all the signals are being transmitted through neurons. Similarly in this network, so everything connects, every bit of things get connected, and it creates a parallel system. So you can say it's a zigzag, a more complex architecture wherein the information is not sequential, it's more parallel, wherein any node, if it is node 1, node 2, node 3, and information needs to be retrieved from node 3, it won't be like A, B, C then to node 3, it can be directly, you can say the information can be called out from node 3, and that creates a neural network that is more mimicking the human brain. Just how we connect whenever we need to solve any issue, like anything that comes to us, that is more about we try to parallelly do all the tasks together and get the desired result. This is how we do all the problem solving techniques. Similarly, this artificial intelligence does the similar thing, although it has not matched the human intelligence, but but you can say the architecture behind all these things is more you can say a copy of the human brain. So as far as this generative AI is concerned, it is more about GPT, generative pre-trained transformer. So this GPT, so there are many AI or generative AI tools which are listed like Chat GPT, DAL, so there is one DAL E2. So there are many uses of generative AI, or it could create audio, it could code on its own. You just need to give the prompt and the problem statement. It can create codes or those software codes on its own. That the similar thing is alpha code. So this particular tool codes on its own. Similarly, you can also create those images. You just need to give the prompt like I want to draw a certain scene wherein X, Y, Z things are there. It can generate numerous ways, numerous different patterns which could be selected. So how does it do it? It's all about these techniques are known as generation. So this is generative AI, but it is also pre-trained. So what is the idea behind this pre-trained? That it also has a body of information. We'll see how this generative AI works, and that particular body of information is known as data lake. So whatso information, it actually starts with an initial set of information. Then it keeps on interacting based on the prompts which are given by the user, and it tries to create a data bank, and that data bank it keeps on storing things, and that creates a body of knowledge that is known as the data lake. And then if another prompt is being another question, that prompt means any question is being asked, then this generative AI tries to interact with the data lake, tries to use the neural network, the artificial intelligence based information pattern recognition, and tries to delve those information which are relevant to the prompts which has been given, and it creates an output based on it. So that is why this is known as body of information or the data lake, and that is why it is known as pre-trained. You need to train it. So it is all about training of AI. It's like a child which is being trained, and when it becomes an adult or when it gets that level of intelligence, then it can generate information on its own. But how, which type of information is getting generated? Transformed information. Transformed information. We'll go deep into this in subsequent slides. What is the difference between replica of information and transformed information? So if you give information A, B, C, it would create another thing which would not be directly replica of either A information, B information, C information. Rather it would try to combine these things and create another set of information which would be more modeled on this rather than a replica of that information. So I would say you can get it more in nutshell, you can say transformation is more about just like reaction, a chemical reaction. A plus B gives C, where C is not a replica of either A or B, rather it's a combination which is totally different. So that is a kind of transformation that is happening, but this is what is in theoretical sense. Ideally, if this is the transformation, then why is there this IP issue? We'll see that although most of these AI tools, generative AI tools, they think that they are transformative tools, rather they are derivative tools. They derive information out of it rather than getting those information transformed into a newer type of information. So this is the issue that has been posed by many of those original content creators, creative creators, all those things. They feel that this generative AI, this is not transforming information, rather it is deriving an information which is a part of the broader or the original work which has been done by those original creators. This is the issue which has been raised. Before that, we will see how this, what are the steps broader, although this is a very complex system as to how these things get proceeded, how do the output get generated, but I will try to make it more you can say simpler. So this is the point. Here the condition is it has already been pre-trained. The condition is that AI tool or generative AI tool is already pre-trained. So when it is pre-trained, it has a relevant data lake or a body of knowledge. So what does it do? When this input is given, what is this input? The prompt. If you go and write your prompt here. When you write to ChatGPT, give me various options to spend my weekend. Suppose this is the prompt that is given. Then it will try to analyze the input which is given. Like I will write it, give me options to spend my weekend. Now it will try to use these key things and it will try to analyze as to the user is asking about various options to spend his weekend. Then he will try to connect it with his or that data lake, wherein it will try to recognize a unique pattern that matches these prompts. Here this data lake would not be containing exact replica about if some other prompts was given how to spend this weekend. It will try to be more, you can say, unique in the sense that whenever a new prompt is being given, an information is being given, an information is just passed on to the data lake to, you can say, reform it, to revise it, rather than identically using or replicating the information out of this data lake. So this analysis is done based on the information which is stored in the data lake. Now it will create various options, and that options is all about the neural network. That is where this neural network comes into play, wherein it uses memory also, at the same time it also uses its own information processing ability. Now it will try to self verify whether the information or whether the output, before giving exact output, whether the output which is being given, does it satisfy all the conditions which is being given in the prompt. If the internal checks say it that it is all satisfied, then a specific output is given. Here are the lists of all the options. It will write it in a language which is more readable, which would sound like as if a person has written all the options. So this is the way a generative AI works in, you can say, text. Similar thing goes in, you can say, all those audio, video and all those stuffs. But if this is the system, then how AI issue comes into picture? We need to again go back to this GPT, generative pre-trained transformer. So this is the only issue which is being raised. Generative. So there is technological issue related to it as to what is the neural network, what is the level of intelligence. I talked about this artificial intelligence, narrow AI, weak AI and strong AI. So we need to have this technological limitation or technological issue that comes into picture, because it is all dependent on the data and how it processes information. It's far too complex and the methodology or the syntax. Syntax means if input is given and output is being given out, what is the processing which is being done? That processing is far too complex for normal humans to understand it. So that poses a technological challenge or technological issue out of it. Then there is an issue of IP infringement. So it violates certain IP norms. So what is the idea behind intellectual property? Intellectual property says that any human creativity needs to be protected by way of various means. What are those means? It could be by way of patents for all those things, all those products which have been created, which is unique and which is an output out of human creativity. It's all about human creative mind which is being applied. Then second is copyright. So all those literal works, literary works, music, audio visuals, that needs to be the books or the information that is written, and all the music, videos and all those things, that needs to be copyrighted. So whenever that information is being used, a permission has to be taken from the original creator. That is the idea behind this copywriting. Then it could be trademark for unique logo, for unique tagline. Similarly, for unique designs, there could be design registration. So these types of protection are given to the unique creativity which is being done by humans. The idea is it is being done by humans. So if any of those unique creativity is being used, a permission needs to be sought or a compensation in terms of royalty needs to be paid. But there's an issue. We talked about that there is a data lake. There's a data lake and it needs information that needs to be added to it. But any information, if it is being added and if there is no permission for those unique information that was added to this data lake, if that was not sought, that creates an violation of intellectual property rights, because it is a pre-trained system. So it needs certain initial training, and whenever an initial training has to be given, then the information that is being used for those training purposes, the original creator of those information needs to be asked if that person is giving the consent or not. If the consent is not being given, then that raises epistemological issue question more related to the knowledge, whether it is authentic or not. So I talked about this epistemological aspect where the philosophy talks about whenever the knowledge is being created, whether the knowledge is proven, the source of the knowledge, whether it is authentic or not, and that is why it creates an issue. Then another set of issue that comes into picture is this transformer. We talked about that whatever is created in the output aspect, input, output, whether that output can be considered as transformation or whether it is just a derivative. I'll make it more detailed in the next slide. What is the meaning of, what is the difference between transformation and derivative? Okay, so this is the more issue, the core issue behind this artificial intelligence in the realm of this IP infringement as well as epistemological issue which has been posed by original creators. These are the issues which have been posed by original creator. There was an issue, there was one case by J.K. Rowling wherein the an original content of Harry Potter was used to create another set of universe which was more similar to Harry Potter, but which was not identical or replica of Harry Potter, and that was challenged in the court, the US court, about the IP rights or the copyright violation. So from there are many numerous cases which have been raised, either which is related to the data lake which is being created, or the IP, or you can say AI training which has been given. The permissions of use for those information have not been sought, or the output which is being generated, whether it is complete opposite, or you can say completely different from the original content or not. Then at the same time, we will see in the next slide as to what is the issue. The core IP related or intellectual property associated challenges related to this generative AI is: first, ownership. Suppose A was the original owner, original creator, whose information was used in data lake, and here generative AI, it used this and created an information which was sought by B. B was another creator. It only gave a prompt to generative AI that I want to create a thing. Suppose this was a music video, suppose this was a story. I will limit this thing to the text aspect. This was a story. Now B said to generative AI, it gave a prompt that I want to create story where the characters are doing X, Y, Z, and this generative AI delved into that data lake wherein some of the information was used to, which was modeled on this original creator content, which was A. Now who is the owner of the output? Whether A can claim ownership, or whether B will say that I am the original creator of that output which has been generated by giving prompts to generative AI. And another issue associated, one is who is the owner, and another issue which is generated, whether that output is human created or not. So the issue is whether the output which has been created, whether it is human created or not, because B did not do anything, it just gave a prompt to generative AI to create a story which was modeled, which was similar on the lines which was originally created by A. So the output would have various aspects. If B goes and say that, if goes to that office of patent office or that copyright office, that I want to get this particular output copyrighted, then the question would be asked whether you are the original, because any copyright thing needs to have human element to it. Whether that particular thing was created by, it is created by generative AI, what was the role of B then? At the same time, A would challenge it, it was modeled on my original work. So that creates an ownership issue. Second issue or second challenge related to IP is derivative work. GPT says that it is transformative. Modeled on this, I will just make this thing another example. Suppose a unique cloth and painting on cloth. There was a unique cloth, a unique fabric that was created. A painting was done on that unique clothing. Then this becomes a unique human creation, and it is granted, suppose it is granted patent. Now if another company comes and it just cuts a portion out of this cloth and creates a handkerchief, एक रुमाल बना देता है, which is so unique, it has different uses because it satisfies some of the challenges of normal handkerchief, and it tries to get a patent for this handkerchief because it has a novel use and it has been created by some another company. Whether it is a transformative work or a derivative work, on the face of it, it is just a derivative work because it is nothing new. It's all about uniqueness of this particular product. A derivative, a portion of it has been created out of it, a handkerchief which satisfies some of the conditions. The similar thing goes with artificial intelligence, generative AI. If this particular thing is being created, whether it is generative work or whether it is transformative work, as I told you, transformation should be A plus B should give C, and C should not be directly related with A or B, just like a chemical reaction, but here it is related, so it is kind of a derivative work. If this has certain properties, unique properties, it is all about uniqueness of this particular product rather than having a thing which has been created on its own. The same thing is generative AI. If this story has certain thing which is new or which has certain thing which creates we can say a uniqueness, a USP, and that particular USP is all about because this story was created out of an information that was used of original creator, then that creates derivative work issue rather than transformative work issue. So there this issue comes into picture. Then the third core challenge is fair use. Same thing, A created original content and it was changed by generative AI into B, but up to how much B can have similarity with respect to A. How much fair it is to say that B is different from A, because any copyright content has this fair use doctrine of fair use. The doctrine of fair use says that if a particular piece of work, text or anything that is being used, that particular thing can have violation of copyright if it is being used for education purpose, critics purpose, news or reporting purpose, but not for any other commercial purpose. So commercial purpose is not allowed. But here if B seeks any pay or copyright for the content which was generated out of this generative AI, that creates a violation of fair use policy or fair use doctrine. So this is another generative AI posed IP related associated challenge. Then the last, which is the culmination of all these challenges, the licensing and royalty. Suppose this has been created, whether A would get a portion of royalty or not, whether the license which has been given to B, whether a fee would be charged by A or not. So the original creator would get certain remuneration out of the profits which has been done, which has been made by B on a content which that B claims that has been done by generative AI rather than plagiarism of the work which is being done by A. So this creates an issue whether the licensing and royalties would be shared between the original content or the content which has been transformed out of A. Now these are the IP associated challenges. Now we see the epistemological challenges, so related to the knowledge aspect. The first thing is the knowledge system itself. As I told you that it works on data lake. So this is the information base. But this information base can have culture bias. Suppose the information base which is being used does not give importance to Indian system of knowledge. Suppose you go and ask to ChatGPT that I want Ayurvedic knowledge or Ayurvedic treatment on certain disease. But if ChatGPT had been pre-trained on allopathic or Western system of medicine, then ChatGPT would not be in a position to give relevant information. All because the information which was created in the data lake had certain culture bias. And that undermines the indigenous system of knowledge. For example, Western medicine is more about treatment of symptoms, symptomatic treatment. But Indian system of medicines is all about the root cause treatment by making sure that our lifestyles are more coherent and more balanced. So all the reactions which are within our body needs to be balanced by making sure that our lifestyles are transformed in a more systematic way. But it violates the information base which was there in the ChatGPT, or I am not talking about specific generative AI, it could be any other generative AI. So this creates an impact on systems of knowledge. So how would it impact the system of knowledge? So whatsoever information, if suppose it has faint knowledge or faint information about this Ayurvedic system, then whatsoever it is being created, the output which is being created, it won't be having a perfect, you can say, proof of knowledge, would be missing. So this proof of knowledge would be missing because that particular generative AI has not been trained on it. So this is one of the issue, and that creates culture bias and representation issues, wherein those Western thoughts, Western philosophies, Western system of medicines, Western way of work, they are overrepresented. They are overrepresented in this data lake. And if an information is created on this particular flawed or biased database, that would create a false, or you can say underrepresented output for those indigenous systems. So this is one of the issue related to epistemological issue, because that could not be proven. The knowledge is half baked because Indian system, Indian philosophy talks about Praman. This is the core of Indian philosophy. Any Indian system of knowledge would be saying that it needs proofs based on perception, pratyaksh or perception, anuman, inference, and shabd or testimony. It wants that if that system of knowledge is valid, then it should satisfy all these things. It should have this perception of validity, it should be inferred, any logic, any inference can be drawn out of it, and it should have testimony, it should be validated by way of text or by way of verbal validation. But all because that body, the data lake was not having core knowledge about this Ayurvedic system, then the information which is generated would be half baked or half true. Then and associated challenge would be authorship and creativity. So the idea is, if it is, who is the, just like IP raised this author of the output, because whenever we say that any IP, any human creativity has to be created, it takes time, it is a slow process. It's an iterative process. But creative processes are very slow processes, very iterative, internal rearrangement of symbols or the information that goes into the mind, then only a novel idea is created. But generative AI creates information in a flash, in 1 second, not more than 1-2 seconds. Then how can we say that it is an art, it is an art of creativity? If any novel idea has to be created using generative AI, then how can we say that it violates the idea of creativity itself? Because it is not a slow process. It is not being done based on, you can say, certain deep thoughts. Insight learning goes into those creative ideas. But generative AI is all about using statistical tool, pattern recognition, neural networks. They try to get information in a short period of time. Then that violates the epistemological, the basis of knowledge, as to how can we say that the thing that has been generated is a product of intellectual property. Then similarly, whether it is an act of innovation, whether it can be said an information or the thing which is being created, like a story which is created, is it an innovation or it is just like a renovation? It's just like camouflaging the original information, copy pasting things and creating, you can say, masking things in a way that it creates, it looks like a novel idea, just like an issue of plagiarism. Whether it is innovation or novel idea, or whether it is just another form of plagiarism by using those generative AI. So these are the challenges which are more related to the content which are being generated to generative AI. And as far as the ethical considerations are concerned, whenever we say that ethical considerations are undermined, one thing is data secrecy is violated, because whenever the data lake is being used, the consent, informed consent from original creator is not sought, and the initial basis of information on which it is created, the foundation itself is biased, because the data lake itself is not all incorporative. It should be all comprehensive, it should include everything, but it is the tech company or the creator of that generative AI which has created that particular tool, and how that particular company has incorporated the data in those information base, that creates the foundation, rather than, you can say, a neutral database. So that creates the ethical issue related to the information that is getting generated through generative AI. But still, I told you that it's a dual use technology. So there would be a talk of AI dilemma. So it has certain negative aspects and also very positive aspects, like those generative AI reduces repetitive tasks, and you can say it frees those repetitive, it frees a substantial portion of human labor in terms of time for creative activities. Like अगर कुछ भी काम ऐसा करना पड़े that is more repetitive, those generative AI could do things in a flash rather than using your brain for those things, getting preoccupied, spending time. The time could be used for other productive work. But at the same time, because of the other issues like biases and all those issues, undermining of the indigenous system of knowledge, there are certain apprehensions also. So there is dual use dilemma or AI dilemma. Apart from that, generative AI has other issues like misinformation, because the information that is presented in terms of output, it looks as if it is authentic. It is not like a machine generated information, it seems as if a person has written those information. So it seems like it is authentic, but it could be misinformation. So that creates trust issues. Suppose after numerous times those informations are found out to be false, fake, that creates trust issue into the system, because humans have this, you can say, knack of asking things again and again. So if repeatability of information that is being sought out is not authentic, that creates trust issue. Then it is very easy to spread fake news out of generative AI, because the news can be created on its own, and that is why, because of generative AI getting incorporated into this media, it is very easy to spread those fake information, fake news under the garb of being authentic. So that is another issue which is more societal rather than intellectual or epistemological related issues. Then we have also seen deep fakes, which are distorted original content using AI and NLP, LLM, large language models. So it creates distorted thing of the original content. It could be audio visual, it could be clip, it could be any photos that is generated through deep fake, that seems original but that is fake. So these are another challenges to it, but because of these challenges it is very difficult to arrive at the situation that AI is all bad. AI has very good benefits because it is the future for mankind to relieve themselves from those repetitive and boring mundane tasks, and that would free of time for those creative. Human mind is all about creative ideas, and all because we are, you can say, preoccupied with those repetitive tasks. Generative AI would take those tasks and it would try to make sure that humans use their brain for another set of creative ideas. Now, how internationally these issues related to IP or related to this philosophy of knowledge that is being regulated or taken care of. So US, in terms of intellectual property, granting patents, copyrights or trademarks. So there was a comprehensive President Joe Biden's executive order on artificial intelligence, wherein it was thought that it should be more about creating responsible AI, and AI related development needs to be having, you can say, state surveillance. So all those developments which are there, which are harmful for mankind, that should be stopped and reported to the state authorities immediately. And all those things which are useful for mankind, that should be carried out, but it should have state vigilance also. So within that thing only, related to this patent aspect, this order created, it gave directives to the patent office, the US patent office, related to this copyrights and all those stuffs. It said that any granting of patents which is being done for the work which has been generated, or which has been extracted out of generative AI, needs to be, you can say, supervised, scrutinized, for level of human content or human originality into the ideas. Suppose a new product has been created, how much is the human intervention, how much is the human creativity which has been given in terms of the prompt, in terms of using the best of generative AI, rather than getting dependent solely on generative AI. It's all about the case to case basis. Suppose one case comes wherein it has been found that generative AI was only used to get information, literature, past literature review and all those things, rather than getting a product which is just an evergreening of a product which has already been imparted this patent, then that would be not granted any patent. But if the patent has been granted to a product wherein generative AI was used, but the AI use was only limited to certain things which cannot be said as violation of patents, then that can be given as patents. So it has not 100%, it has not said that the patents or the products or any copyright things will not be given to the products which are being done or which are being created using generative AI. It's all about case to case basis. Then Japan says that it has relaxed those copyright norms as far as using information for AI training. So for creating those data lakes, it has allowed use of original content of original creators, because it needs to create the body of knowledge, and therein it has relaxed the use of those copyright protected information. Similarly, India has said that we need to have a broader framework, a broader artificial intelligence governance framework, AI governance framework, which should more look into responsible AI. So parliamentary committee was more of, it gave a direction. There was a report which talked about, you can say, that the IP related aspects related to generative AI needs to be consulted in a wider public domain. So India has not come out with a dedicated policy or dedicated rules, but it has said that the broader framework or the broader aim of the authorities are creating responsible AI frameworks. So what should be the way forward? So the way forward is enhancing IP regulations. It should be balanced between use and fair use. It should not be violating the originality of earlier content, but it should not also restrict any use of those original content, else that would restrict the creation of further rounds of human creativity or human intellectual properties. Then the second thing is India on other similar country needs to have indigenous AI and large language models that should be based on indigenous data lakes. Data lakes means the information, body of information, because then when any prompt is given and the AI, generative AI tries to delve into the data lake, it would have sufficient information, and the model which would be created would have certain kind of fairness. The culture bias would be minimized. Then there should be education and awareness about the inquisitiveness, the knack of asking the authenticity of output. So whatsoever is being generated by generative AI in terms of outputs, that should not be completely, you can say, trusted upon. Rather there should be further rounds of querying, further rounds of you can say scrolling of information before arriving or before trusting the output, and that particular thing needs to be made aware in terms of a public awareness, and educational program needs to be created so that people and students need to be more made aware on this aspect about this information asymmetry as far as data lakes and an issue of IP rights infringement is concerned. Then there should be collaborations between various stakeholders. So who could be those stakeholders? It could be the tech companies, policy makers, it could be academicians, it could be legal experts and users, because they are the end users. So there should be wider consultation and collaboration before creating a more holistic framework on regulation of generative artificial intelligence. Then at last, the ethical considerations more specific to the informed consent. From original creators, culture bias issue. So these needs to be taken care of. So it should be ensured that the ethical questions are answered in a better manner rather than having you can say an essence of biasness. It should not be having a biased information, because AI is for all. Artificial intelligence does not recognize boundaries, the physical borders. It can be used by anyone. So if the whole of humanity needs to progress, then a global framework on the use of generative AI needs to be created, and that should be all incorporating, diminishing the culture bias, as well as ensuring the indigenization of information needs to be created for creating the holistic data lake. So that was all about this editorial discussion. It was more related to the philosophical aspect rather than technological aspect. So as far as other EDs are concerned, we have covered ED on this dual use dilemma related to AI. We have also covered editorial discussion on AI governance, and we have also covered AI literacy. So there are we have holistically covered various aspects related to artificial intelligence, because this whole era post 2020, when this OpenAI created chat GPT, the whole of the world, it has seen that the world has moved away from, you can say, search engine based Google and all those things, search engine, to more towards artificial intelligence incorporated search engines. So, it is all about having a fair play in terms of the rules which are being set. So, thank you.